The late 2010s and early 2020s have been an amazing time for indie animation, from creators like VivziePop putting out 2 pilots that would go on to become full animated series, to small studios like Glitz Productions starting to make a name for themselves with projects like Murder Drones and The Amazing Digital Circus. There are other series I could mention, but we would be here all day. Point is, indie animation is thriving, and Ramshackle is the new addition to that growing family. So Ramshackle was created by ZZ, who has been building this pet project since 2012. Oh wait, I'm sorry, 2010. Though it didn't personally appear on my radar until I saw the thesis film, which came out in 2020, which went over so well that led to a successful Kickstarter. And full disclosure, I was a backer for this pilot. Got the $26 tier, just below the special thanks tier, so unfortunately my name isn't in the credits. But hey, support is support. So if anyone on the staff is watching, just letting you know that your hard work is appreciated, and this video is coming from a place of love. I sound like a teacher saying that. The premise of Ramshackle is as simple as the pilot itself. In the town of Ramshackle, there is a sharp divide between the poor and the rich, with the upper class having such a dislike for the destitute of the town that they have coined derogatory terms for them, like scraps or street kids. The pilot and other surrounding materials for this universe follows 3 scraps, Vinny, Stone, and Skip, as they try to make a living for themselves by any means necessary. And crazy hijinks ensue. If I were to bring up any shows with similarities to Ramshackle, it would be Ed, Edd and Eddy. And a little bit of Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. Both this and Ed, Edd and Eddy have the premise of 3 kids, each with distinguished personalities, working together to scam a community. Even the dynamics of the Ramshackle crew give off a similar vibe. Stone acts a little similar to Double D, being the most sensible and mature of the bunch, while also acting as the voice of reason, generally playing the straight man in many scenarios with his deadpan personality. Skip is sort of like Ed, being pretty upbeat and eccentric, but not to the point of him being overly dumb or whatever Ed can be at times. And in the pilot, we see him give pretty good advice to a mother who clearly doesn't care for it, but it's the thought that counts.
You know, letting your kid express themselves is actually quite healthy for their development.
Excuse me, what the actual fuck are you doing in my house?
And finally, there's Vinny, who definitely fits the Eddie archetype, being the one that comes up with most of the scams and out of all the group members takes the most initiative. She's also the most violent and potentially deranged of all of them, and is completely willing to throw hands if necessary. Overall, I do enjoy the group dynamic, even though I wish they played with it a bit more in the pilot, more on that later. Visually, Ramshackle is pretty solid all around. Characters in the universe as a whole have this shape language revolving around curves and rounded edges, at least most of the time. I like how objects like street lamps and signs are never fully symmetrical, with everything having some sort of bend and warp to it. Talking about character designs for a second, I do like the artistic decision to portray the crew with more muted colors, to contrast the rich folk who all have neutral or natural color palettes for their clothing. Another detail that's worthy of pointing out is the fingers, which are discolored for some reason. This is actually a trait carried over from Zeddy's personal art, so I like how it's still here. Some other details I enjoy are Stone's cigarette obeying VeggieTales logic and just floating in front of him. The line art on characters can occasionally overshoot and sometimes duplicate, and the line art itself looks like it was drawn with the G pen in like Clip Studio Paint, giving off the effect that like the rough sketches were never fully erased or hidden, which I think really complements the scrappy, unkept nature of the style. The intentional or unintentional human error really brings it all together. Same sort of thing can be said for the backgrounds, which if you look closely, they sort of have a texture of spilled coffee or some sort of liquid. Maybe alcohol? As for the animation itself, it's honestly pretty fine all around. The same can be said for other technical aspects like the soundtrack. It's not that it's bad, far from it, it's that it just gets the job done, and it's nothing that I haven't seen before. So is there anything here that I take issue with? Well, it's just 2 things. Going back earlier to what I mentioned about the group dynamic, I feel one of the pilot's big missed opportunities was showing off the group's synergy when it came to stuff like the big scheme, as all they really do when the pageant is going off is stand there and act as moral support for the baby, and then it does the worm dance and the pageant is over. It just all felt a little anticlimactic. Funny, but a tad underwhelming. This is something that the webcomic shows off very well, as the premise revolves around Stone faking being a victim of a tragic accident, and the other is coming along to guilt trip the man supposedly responsible into giving them money. When their plan is exposed, it escalates into Vinny and Stone getting into a physical altercation that seems completely believable and fools the audience. Hell, it even fooled me at first, only for it to be revealed that that was a scam too, and this time they were able to get away with it. This comic was a good showcase for how each of the 3 work off each other to achieve the main goal, which is to get money by any means necessary. Which is something that the pilot didn't do a whole lot of in my opinion. At least to the extent I wanted it to. Yeah, we get to see them work together in the fight during the climax, but that's more about brute strength rather than, I don't know, reverse psychology. Speaking of the fight, that's my second and last criticism for the pilot. While the fight is fun to watch and is well animated and choreographed, I just thought overall it was out of place and felt a little disconnected from everything else. And the moment when the rich folk became mindless Karen zombies, it was just a moment where my suspension of disbelief was being poked and prodded. Not completely shattered, mind you, just a little rib tickle. Though I will admit it is funny how the fight with the zombie 1% was where my suspension of disbelief was put into question, but the baby turning out to be a biblically accurate angel in reference to 2003's Tokyo Godfathers, yeah, I was completely fine with that. No questions asked.
Though you too are flawed, and God forbid you three reproduce.
So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the Ramshackle pilot. It has its flaws, but for me, they don't detract from the short but very entertaining experience. Since it's free on YouTube, you don't really have much of an excuse to not seek it out. I felt honored to be a backer for this pilot, and will continue to look forward to Zed and her team's work in the future. But that's going to be it from me today. Tell me in the comments what you thought about the pilot. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and do the other algorithmic friendly things. And I'll see you in the next video.